Hello and welcome back to INMR. In today's podcast, we're going to be going over all the action that took place in the Premier League over the weekend. Lots of brilliant games, plenty of shocks, and of course that game on Monday night. I mean, you couldn't take your eyes off it. So we're going to go over everything that happened in each game, where that's put everybody in the league, and finally at the end we'll go over my team of the week based on all the performances that everyone had over the weekend. So starting off with the first game, which was Fulham versus Man United. Final score was 1-0 United, with Bruno Fernandes getting the winner. There's been a lot of, questioning around him whether he's captain material. I think he answered it perfectly there. He popped up when he was needed to. He led the team well. And in the end, it was him that got the 3 points for his side. That result put Fulham in 15th place. They were previously in 14th, and United stay put in 8th position. Fulham did have 3 counter-attacks, but couldn't apply the finishing touch in any of them. They had 18 shots on goal, but didn't score a single goal. They need to be a lot more clinical in front of goal because they did create good chances. They just didn't take them, and that cost them in the end. I think Willian and Paulinho in particular had some really, really good chances to get a goal, or even maybe 2. I think Willian had 2 good chances where he thought he should have scored, but they just didn't take them. Onana stepped up when called upon. He didn't have a lot to do in the first hour, I didn't think. When he was a little bit more active and needed towards the end of the game, he did well in stopping those shots. I was quite impressed by Garnacho, who did really well going forward. He created 2 good chances and got the assist for Scott McTominay's controversial offside goal. He's a player that I think does deserve a lot more game time because he's given it his all every time he does play, which is something that a few United players are lacking. After that, Brentford faced West Ham. The final score was 3-2 Brentford. The main thing for Brentford was that they took their chances and West Ham didn't. West Ham defensively weren't good enough, in my opinion. Kudus and Bowen have been unbelievable. They're in brilliant form. Some of the goals he's scoring are just ridiculous, especially seeing as he's not that experienced. He's still a young winger. But yeah, as I said, some of the goals he's scoring are absolutely ridiculous. Brentford went up to 9th from 10th, and West Ham went down 3 positions. They're now in 12th. Bowen did become the first player to score in his side's first 6 Premier League away games with his goal on Saturday. It wasn't the prettiest, but he won't care. As I said, him and Kudus have been in immense form. Bowen in particular, I think he's just popping up every single time. At the moment, you just know when he gets the ball, something good is going to happen. West Ham defence was a bit shaky, especially for that first goal. Maupay obviously scored his first goal in 14 months, but I just thought West Ham needed to do better there in terms of getting the ball away, and they didn't, and they were punished for it. West Ham turned the game around well. I think they could have seen the game off with that chance where Benrahma and Antonio got in a bit of a mix-up. That definitely would have put the game to bed, in my opinion. It's small margins in football. Unfortunately, little things like that where you don't know who's going for the ball and both people want to be the one to get that goal, that can cost you. Burnley took on Crystal Palace. They lost 2-0. Burnley have had an absolutely horrible start to life in the Premier League. Vincent Kompany was one manager that you thought was going to lead Burnley to, do really well this season. A lot of people thought that Burnley were going to overperform because of him and his playing style, but that hasn't been the case so far. Palace took their chances when they arose, and yeah, as I said, Burnley are continuing to struggle in front of goal. So they remain in 19th, and Palace went up to 11th with that result. This was Burnley's record-breaking 6th consecutive home defeat. I'm not really sure what's happened to them. With the first goal, it was Burnley's fault. It was a defensive error again. They haven't been good enough. Jordan Ayew's assist was superb, but Burnley are creating chances but just can't take them. They're not clinical enough in front of goal at all. They had so many opportunities against Palace. And yes, Sam Johnston's doing well. He's had a brilliant start to the season. A few of the chances, you just thought that's a simple finish. It's their own fault sometimes, Burnley. They're not taking their chances. They're not scoring those easy ones. And then defensively, they just continue to make silly errors. Crystal Palace were actually the second best team on the pitch on Saturday, but they took their chances when they got them, and ultimately that is what wins football games. Everton versus Brighton then, that finished 1-1. I think the key point to take away from that is that Everton have sussed out Roberto De Zerbi's football. Dyche led them to a 5-1 win last season, and they've managed to hold them to a point again here. Brighton need to start shooting more. I think with 80% possession, you need to be doing a lot more. I think a lot of the time Brighton had the ball and didn't seem to do anything with it. Everton had so many people back and Brighton didn't know what to do. Everton do really well at just sitting off and waiting, and Brighton didn't know what to do, and they continued to play the ball around until they gave it away. It was a sloppy pass a lot of the time that ended their attack. They weren't direct enough, in my opinion. They kept waiting for the perfect opportunity when sometimes you just need to get the ball in the box and go for it. Ferguson and Matoma weren't getting enough service. That is something that Brighton do need to work on, because it seems like any time a team sits back, they just panic. Yes, they're passing the ball around when they keep it. The longer it goes on and the longer they have the ball, the more worried they get, and then they do give the ball away because they're like, well, nothing's happening. What's going on? However, Brighton did stay in 7th. Everton went down to 16th from 15th. Brighton attempted 851 passes against Everton, which is the most that anyone's ever done against them in any other league game since Brighton returned to the Prem. They were totally dominant, which is, something that's positive, but Brighton have failed to win from their 3 highest possession games this season, which shows that when they have a lot of the ball and people sit off, they don't know what to do, because there's no bait player coming in, as we've spoken about in previous podcasts. Sometimes Brighton can have too much of the ball and it ends up costing them. Everton, on the other hand, were very patient, countered with purpose, were very quick and effective when they did win the ball back. They were just unlucky in the end. Ashley Young own goal. Personally, with the first equaliser from Lewis Dunk, I didn't think that was offside. Obviously, as a Brighton fan, people are going to argue that I'm being biased, but I do think that there's just not enough angles. With that Lewis Dunk one, the angle's not good, you can't tell. The picture is so pixelated that the players were almost like just blocky. So how could you accurately measure a football player's arm or toe or top sleeve when it's pixelated? You can't tell. I think it should have been allowed, and I think it's a shame that such a brilliant goal got disallowed, because it wasn't. I don't think they had enough evidence to rule it offside, but it is what it is. 1-1 in the end. It is a better result for Everton than it was for Brighton. On to a much more high-scoring game. It is Man City versus Bournemouth. Man City absolutely thrashed Bournemouth 6-1. Jeremy Doku is unbelievable. What a signing. He set the Premier League alight. It's so nice to see a proper winger. You see a lot of, speedy players who like to go down the byline, which is great, but it's been such a long time, in my opinion, since we've seen someone that tricky and have so much flair. Like that first assist to Bernardo Silva, where his feet were just all over the shop. No one knew what was coming next. That poor defender. For me, that is a proper winger, and it's so refreshing to see a player like that doing so well. 4 assists, 1 goal. He broke 2 records in that game. He's the youngest player to ever have 5 goal involvements in a single game, and he's also the youngest player to assist 4 goals in a game. Only 21, has 3 goals and 6 assists in 12 appearances. City had so much of the ball in Bournemouth's half, very clinical in front of goal as always. It's not been good for Bournemouth so far. The manager, Iraola, hasn't had the effect that the Bournemouth board thought he would so far. The game against City is always dreaded, but for Bournemouth it couldn't have come at a worse time. They couldn't keep up with Pep's side. The tempo that they play football, Bournemouth just couldn't handle it. Another historic game then. Sheffield United finally get a Premier League win. They've had a tough start to the season, but at last they've got their victory. 2-1 against Wolves. I think Wolves were a little bit complacent, to be honest with you. They were trying to do too much, sort of always looking for that extra pass instead of shooting. In particular, that Nelson Semedo chance where he just went for that extra pass. He was through on goal. It's quite a simple finish, actually. You just got to go across the goalkeeper, bottom left corner, unopposed. He was free. No one was pressing him because 2 players were in the centre marking the striker, and he played it into the striker who had 2 defenders around him. I really don't understand it. I think that was just more of a thing of, as I say, they were trying to do too much because they thought they knew it was an easy game, but they were punished for not taking their chances when they arose and trying to be too clever with the ball almost. Sheffield United are still bottom of the Premier League, but it's nice just to get a victory under your belt. Obviously, Wolves moved down to 14th with that loss. I think they underestimated Sheffield United. I think they thought that they could afford to, sort of be silly in front of goal and do too much. But in the end, they were punished for the unnecessary passes in front of goal. Cameron Archer's finish was absolutely unbelievable. He had an effort prior to that and came close. I think Wolves just allowed him to, sort of find his range, which they shouldn't have done, and they were punished for that as well. The Wolves goal took a massive deflection, was unlucky really, and Sheffield United's penalty, I think definitely a foul. Irresponsible challenge. It's what I'd say is a typical striker's foul inside the box. really irresponsible and unnecessary in my opinion. Doesn't help Fabio Silva's cause at all. He seems to be on his way out. There's been rumours that Gary O'Neill is looking for a new number 9 in January. Just to finish off, what a penalty from Ollie Norwood. The final Saturday game was Newcastle versus Arsenal. This was one of the most controversial games of the weekend due to the goal. Obviously, if anyone has seen Arteta's press conference after the game, he wasn't happy with it. He called it a disgrace, an embarrassment. Newcastle stay in 6th with the win. Arsenal dropped down to 4th. In terms of how I feel about the goal from Gordon, I don't think the angle was good enough to see if the ball went out with Joe Willock when he chased it. It could be slightly overhanging, as we've seen before. It's sort of like an optical illusion, as Gary Neville described it. I think, personally, it's ridiculous that with all the tech that's been introduced over the last few years, we continue to have terrible angles and pictures that don't help anyone come to a fair conclusion. So much money is spent on VAR and all these different types of technology that all the Premier League clubs have to have installed into their stadiums, and yet they don't have cameras everywhere. Well, they do have cameras everywhere, but they never seem to have the angles when it comes to VAR. But nonetheless, it was given, and Arsenal lost their heads, I think. Towards the end especially, they were panicking in additional time, and Newcastle dealt with it. They shut up shop, and they did that very well. They've done that very well for a long time. And ultimately, once the decision's given, that's it. You can't let that affect you for the rest of the game, and I feel like Arsenal did. You need the right angle, and without the right angle, you can't chalk the goal out, in my opinion. On to Sunday's fixtures then. We had Nottingham Forest shock Aston Villa with a 2-0 victory. Forest went up to 13th, Villa remained in 5th with that result. As I said, quite a surprise. Villa have been high-flying up until now. The first goal from Aina was great, but in my opinion, Villa needed to defend better there. Who left him to be free on the edge of the box? I don't know, but even when he received it, nobody closed him down. It was quite obvious that the pass was coming towards him. They had plenty of time to react as the pass was heading towards him. But no one closed him down, gave him far too much time to pick his spot, and yeah, very much their own doing with that goal. It was a great finish, yes, don't want to take credit away from that because it was a nice goal, but somebody on the Villa team needed to be closing him down. He was given far too much time to decide what he was going to do. Emi Martinez, poor performance, not his day at all, had to save the second goal in my opinion. Villa did have a few chances, yes, but they weren't their usual ruthless selves in front of goal. Luton versus Liverpool, how close was that to what would have been an amazing victory for Luton? So close to a historical win. Luis Diaz equalised in the 96th minute. A 1-1 draw to Liverpool. Before the game started, any Luton fan would have been absolutely delighted with that, so it is a good result. It's a brilliant result, actually. They've moved up to 17th, so they're out the relegation zone with that draw. Liverpool moved up to 3rd. I think Trent created good chances going forward. He created the most in the game with 6. Núñez, wow, so poor at finishing. He gets some good goals sometimes, but you have to put away them easy ones without fail. As a striker for Liverpool, those are just the ones that shouldn't even be a question mark anywhere near it. There was that one where he was offside anyway, where he blazed it over the bar, but it doesn't matter. You've got to be putting those away every single time, and he's just not. He's a really weird striker, because he can't finish easy chances and then he goes on and scores amazing goals. Yeah, not good enough in my opinion. Definitely a goal for Luton in my opinion. I know from the corner there was a shout for handball before Luton countered, but the Luton player wasn't facing the ball. His hand, it did strike his arm, definitely, but he wasn't even looking that way. It hit the back of his arm, he couldn't see what was happening. No handball in my opinion. And then a brilliant counter-attack, just caught Liverpool napping. They were too busy complaining about the handball. Nice finish from Chong. Brilliant moment for Luton. Shame they didn't win. But as I said, a point against Liverpool is a superb result. Final game of the weekend, and arguably the best one, Tottenham versus Chelsea. Wow, what a game. Plenty of goals, red cards galore. Tottenham are finally beaten in the league. They've dropped down to 2nd with this loss. Chelsea have moved up from 11th into 10th. Every Premier League side, of course, has now lost at least one game this season. Finished off the weekend in some style with that 4-1 win. In terms of the disallowed goals for Chelsea, the Raheem Sterling one I agree with. Caicedo's was unlucky, but they got a penalty anyway, so it didn't really matter. Probably just a bit disheartening for him, because that would have been his first goal for the club. Vicario, the goalkeeper for Spurs, I thought had a terrific game. I know he conceded 4 goals, but those final 3 came in at a point where they had 9 players, they were playing a high line. Fair play to Spurs, who kept going. You know, that interview with Postecoglou where he said if we've got 5 on the pitch, we're still going to have a go. I like that they didn't change their playing style just because of what happened. I respect that they continue to play their football despite the circumstances. Romero had to go. He was being really stupid. Same for you, Doggy. I don't know what they were thinking, to be honest with you. I think sometimes London derbies just get the better of people. There's being passionate about your club and your football, and then there's just being an idiot. Jackson hat-trick really did rub salt in the wounds, to be honest. His hat-trick was like a five-a-side game when no one comes back to stop you and you just go through and score. It wasn't a particularly impressive hat-trick. It was against 9 men. It still took Chelsea 20-odd minutes to get a goal, even against 9 men. But it was always going to happen. 9 against 11. Spurs weren't going to stop them forever. So that is all of the games. If we go now onto my team of the week. In goal, I've gone for Thomas Kaminski. He made 5 saves against Liverpool, and a few of them, I did think he's not going to be able to stop those. And he did. Did really well against world-class players, and the odds stacked against him. He's been a good signing so far for Luton. They've had it hard because, being a promoted team, arguably the weakest promoted team, but he really impressed me against Liverpool. Left back, I've gone for Nottingham Forest's Harry Toffolo. He got player of the match in the game, 2 assists, 2 chances created. He didn't have a lot of the ball, but when he did have it, he made stuff happen. So he's my left back. 2 centre backs, I've gone for Akanji and Maguire. Akanji got a goal against Bournemouth, 90% pass accuracy. He made 8 passes into the final third, won all of his duels, didn't commit a foul. Bournemouth had no chance against him. He was really solid at the back and, of course, contributed going forward as well. Maguire, he was actually really solid in this game. 2 blocks, 9 clearances, 8 headed clearances. He was only dribbled past once. He won 10 out of his 13 duels. He had a solid performance going forward. He made 12 passes into the final third, so he was creating as well. And most importantly, a clean sheet. So I don't think you can ask for much more than that from a defender. Right back, I've gone for Trent Alexander-Arnold. He created 6 chances in the Luton match. Really good outlet going forward. 2 of those chances were big ones that weren't put away, unfortunately, due to Nunes not being clinical. He made 22 passes into the final third. He was great when starting an attack. Still not good enough defensively, but attacking-wise, very, very impressive. 3 centre midfielders. To start off with, I've got Conor Gallagher. He has been immense so far this season for Chelsea. For someone that was on their way out in the summer, he's now captaining Chelsea and he's doing well. He got an assist, he was the most accurate passer in the match, created the most chances with 5, and he's just relentless. He never seems to get tired, and he's someone that I've been really impressed with at the start of this season. Second midfielder, Bernardo Silva, of course, 2 goals, combined really well with Jeremy Doku. He created 3 chances as well. City overall was superb, but Bernardo Silva was another one who stood out for me. Final midfielder, Bruno Fernandes, got the winning goal for his team. Created 1 chance, made 7 passes into the final third, and in my opinion, did what a captain should do and led by example. Left wing, easiest one of the weekend, Jeremy Doku. Player of the week in my opinion. Unbelievable performance. There's not a lot you can say about him this week. I think he left a lot of people pretty speechless. On the right, Mohamed Kudus scored a wonder goal. Created the most chances in the game. Very dangerous going forward in a lot of these games so far this season. He continued to do that against Brentford. He's another fairly simple one for me. Another brilliant signing as well. And then up front, Nicholas Jackson. As I said, not the most impressive hat-trick, but is a hat-trick nonetheless in a London derby. Killed off the game. So yeah, fair play to him for getting a hat-trick. They all count. In the end, it did win the game for his side. That is where I'm going to end today's podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and I will be back soon with another one.